So, dude, when did you? Let's see, where to start. Where to start? Where are you from originally?
I kind of a little bit all over the place, but I was born in upstate New York, and I grew up in San Diego in California. Lived there for all my childhood, teen years, and then after that, I kind of moved around. I lived in Berkeley for a year. I lived in Chicago for 2 years.
Hmm.
Then San Francisco for almost 10 years. So that was like kind of like my special place where I kind of grew up, in my 20s and early 30s. Moved to Portland, Oregon for 4 years, and then I've been in Montreal, in Quebec, in the country of Canada, which is the country above the United States.
Our hat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The extension, the extended edition.
The Loge. Um,
So I've been there for the last 5 years, but yeah, I grew up in Southern California.
okay, I had no idea. So, whereabouts in San Diego? You know how obviously San Diego is like all this like these disparate little pieces. Whereabouts were you?
I grew up in a pretty uh, poor, mixed ethnic neighborhood called Lameda Village. Just was just like in the middle of nowhere, kind of like by Spring Valley, by Lemon Grove. Not anywhere that's near like where the San Diego Comic Con is, or
Right.
like North Park, where I lived when I was like in my like my late teens, early 20s, things like that. Just like kind of like a little yeah, a little neighborhood, just
Okay.
a little suburban neighborhood, pretty poor.
And how old were you? How old were you when you left?
I think I was 19 or 20. Yeah, I think I was 19 when I first moved to Berkeley, which is I tried to move to San Francisco, but that was sometime around 1997, 1998, and it was early in the whole .com thing, but it had already
Yeah.
started, and it was already too expensive for me as like a little teenager
Yeah.
who had these like dreams of like being a bohemian in San Francisco. So I ended up living in this like very strange home, like kind of like with some friends of mine that was like at the crossroads of Emeryville and Berkeley and Oakland, and we lived there for a year, and then I moved back to San Diego for a little while, and then after that I've just pinged around.
Okay. Jeff just got on the call.
I'm
Yeah,
so sorry, guys.
yeah, not a problem.
Okay.
Francois is from San Diego, of all places. You probably
I
knew
did
that.
not know that.
It's funny that you mentioned trying to move to San Francisco and not being able to during the .com boom, because that was around the same time that I moved up here from Ventura, a little
Okay.
north of San Diego, and it was the same thing. Like initially, we were like, oh, we're gonna move to the city, and we're gonna like do this great extension of like the punk rock version of the Haight Ashbury scene. And yeah, it was already way priced out by then. Like the only place we could even begin to afford was this really just dank apartment in the Tenderloin that had a view of a brick wall and a stand-up shower. And I was like, I think I'll take my chances on getting shot in the East Bay over this.
Well, I mean, when I eventually I moved to San Francisco, I did finally move to San Francisco a few years after that, and I guess like for the people who don't know, I know you guys. I know both of you, and I know you from San Francisco. So
Yeah.
that's why we're talking about it, I guess. But when I did move there, I lived in the Tenderloin. That was like the first place I lived, and that was crazy. I was like living with my friend and like my girlfriend and her boyfriend and like sometimes another person and a hedgehog, all in a room, like a one room studio in a building on the Tenderloin. It was
Jeez.
it was a wild life, and but I was dedicated. I was
Yeah.
dedicated to that San Francisco dream. I was like, I'm gonna make it if I can
Yeah.
make it here.
And you're what, 2021 by then? The things that we'll put up with at that age.
Yeah, exactly. That's just about right. Yeah.
I was still putting up with my parents at that age, and if you guys knew them, that is no small feat.
Knowing them through anecdotes and your comics, I can attest that that's no small feat.
Yeah, so yeah, I want to say I met you around. I want to say it was around Zine Fest, like around that crowd of people or that event. I couldn't tell you what year though.
I wouldn't be surprised. That sounds about right. Because I with a couple other people, I ran the San Francisco Zine Fest for a few years, which was a kind of interesting combination of things, because I like my zine bona fides are not like immaculate, like I'm not like an anarchist. I wasn't like an anarchist vegan who was like creating like a commune or something like that. I was like trying to do comics and everything, but I also really like community and everything. So I got involved with the Zine Fest, and I really think it is just right about then that I met you and that I met Jeff. I remember Jeff was sitting somewhere in the Zine Fest, like tabling, and like somebody I knew thought he was cute and was like, "Look at that man in that tan sweater over there. I think that's a." She was like, "I think that's a handsome man." And I was like, "Okay."
She was so generous to refer to me as a man, and not like look at that boy wearing a sweater he literally purchased from the children's section of a thrift store.
Did you find with the Zine Fest that there was any shade thrown on you for not being a proper zine person, or did you find that you were pretty well accepted as, a mini comics person, the strange like hunchback cousin to the zine people?
Right. I mean, I really don't want to exaggerate it, because I'm all for that community and the kind of crossover of comics and zines. I mean, I think that there were definitely a couple of situations where I felt out of place, like I felt like my attitude, like where I was coming from, like I have like bourgeois aspirations, right? I'm my whole life, like I've been like, oh, maybe I could have some more money. That would be cool. And sometimes that I felt like that was like rubbing the wrong way with the San Francisco Zine Fest. But I mean, the whole San Francisco Zine Fest also was kind of rubbing in a weird way against everything that was happening in San Francisco at that time. I can't remember the exact years I was running it. It was about 6 years, and it was in the early 2000s, and there was just so much money moving around, and I didn't touch any of it, and the Zine Fest didn't touch any of it. And sometimes it would we'd come close to it in a weird way, like once someone I knew convinced me to curate a zine library for a gallery opening for something, and I was like, okay, sure, that sounds good. And then the night of the opening, I found out that it was like the Levi's jeans company, like corporation, that had put on the whole thing, and I was like, oh, I think we just got like punked into like giving up all credibility by working with a like giant, clothing manufacturer. But fine, I got tricked, but it's okay.
See, I remember.
Oh, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I remember Sarah mentioning that Scion, the car company, had offered to sponsor Zine Fest one year too.
Yeah, that was a really funny, weird conversation. Like I remember I met with like this marketing guy from Scion, people who make cars. And, we had like a meeting down the street from my work in the Haight and at a coffee shop. And I remember we were talking about like maybe potentially sponsoring, doing something. And, and he was like, okay, well, what's your budget per year? And I can't remember exactly, but it was something like, we ran the whole thing for like $3,000 or $4,000, right? Like that's the whole entire cost, maybe $5,000. And I told him the budget, and he laughed out loud. He was just laughing and laughing. He was like, "Oh, that's great. Well, we could just pay for the whole thing, like no problem." Like for him, it was like nothing. He was like, "Oh yeah, we'll just put a little like presented by Scion at the top, or like the Scion San Francisco Zine Fest," and then we turned them down because it was just too weird. Like it was too weird to. It was too strange to even consider doing that when like the top level branding of the concept of the thing is this self-publishing it. And I was like, oh, I don't think we can do this, but it's really weird. There was all this stuff everywhere. But I mean, I don't know if you guys ever feel this way. I have a feeling that maybe you do, but sometimes I think back at San Francisco and I'm like, oh, I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, like during the height of the .com boom, and I somehow made no money.
Same. Yeah. I mean, I didn't come up here for the money, thankfully, because I think if I had, I would have washed out. When I first was looking at moving up here, I think I visited here in 97 and then made my plan to relocate in 99. And I was telling people my plans. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back to junior college and I'm going to learn how to use a computer because somehow I'm 25 and I've managed to not learn how to do that yet. And, then I'm just going to get a job and I'll live up there. And people are just like, hey, have you heard of this thing called the .com boom? And I'm like, I just told you I don't know how to use a computer. How would I know about that?
I didn't realize they were booms.
And I was just like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I'm just doing this thing. And, it's fortunate to be in that situation where it's like your mission is this one thing and you don't let the other stuff get in the way. And it's also very fortunate to be like, this 27-year-old full of piss and vinegar, because I doubt I could be so brave now.
Right. I mean, like, it's like one of those things. It's like, what do you have to lose at that point? And I definitely, that was definitely an internalized concept that I had in my life all through my 20s and early 30s, was just like, I didn't have anything to lose, to just do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah. So you went from doing the Zine Fest to line work. Was there a break in between that, or was it a pretty straight transition?
There definitely was a break there, a couple years, I think, and because I was kind of over it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop organizing events, and then I thought I was out, and they pulled me back in. There was just some sort of energy. I like being social. I like meeting people. And I often really like it when I have like an excuse to talk to people or meet people, right? Like, I'm not the kind of person that just like, like one time I was hanging out with a friend of mine, like another cartoonist, and he saw this woman like writing or drawing or like writing with like some comic pages by her at the coffee shop we were sitting at. And he like went right up to her and he was like, hey, tell me about your comics. What's going on? And I was like, wow, never in my life did I like just like would I see someone drawing a comic and be like, like, oh, I'm, but if someone talks to me for some reason, if someone comes up to me and it's like, hey, I see you're drawing comics, I'm more than happy to talk to them about it. It's just like, I need to have a reason to talk to people. Anyways, I like organizing things. I like shows. There was a show in Portland, Oregon, a comic show that was not that great. And my friend Zach Soto and I were like, okay, we're going to do a comic book and illustration show. It's going to be totally different than what this other one that's going on is. And then that one actually, it canceled. Like, it ended up being canceled like a day before we decided to announce. And then so suddenly it was like we were announcing into this void, but it wasn't planned. We were going to compete with them. And instead, like, they folded right before we were going to compete with them. And then so we inherited like all the kind of comic book, zine, underground, indie, cartoonist energy in Portland. And it was really fun. We did this show called Linework Northwest for 3 years. And I was really, really happy with it. It was like totally a success. It was one of the, it was free, which is very important for me, like for the public to come in. I hate the concept of people paying money to buy things. We made it a zine, not a zine, but a comic and illustration show. So we invited a bunch of illustrators and like poster artists and stuff like that who weren't just doing comics, to kind of get like that kind of crossover energy. We had a lot of really cool special guests over 3 years. We had like Michael DeForge and Daniel Klaus and Jim Woodring and Matt Fury. Like, Matt Fury, the year of the 2016 election, just before Pepe the Frog turned into a psychotic, like, far right, like
a conservative spokesfrog.
It was so odd. It was really odd. Like, it was really odd. I was just thinking about that because there's the new documentary out about that, and I was thinking back to when he was our special guest that year, along with some other people. But yeah, line work was super fun. I'm glad that we retired it. I had already moved to Montreal by the time the third one happened, so it was really, really hard to do. We had a lot of people organizing it. It's kind of in my nature to take on a lot of the organizational duties with that kind of thing, and so I was taking on a lot, and I was doing it all from afar, which was a little difficult. So I'm glad it's retired. I think that there's some new stuff in Portland, but I don't know. I'm really glad that we did it. It was super fun.
Yeah, it was a great show. I did it, I want to say, at least 2 of the 3 years.
I think you did the second and third year, if I recall correctly.
And yeah, it was an amazing show. I mean, I always like doing the shows in the Pacific Northwest anyway, because all of my friends who fled the Bay Area in the last 15 years, have settled up there, so I get to see them. But it's also that Pacific Northwest audiences, Portland, Olympia, Seattle, they don't waste your time. Like they come out and they come out to actually shop. Like they don't come out to maul your table and then walk away, which seemed to be like the real Bay Area thing. So I always did really well at those shows and like really just enjoyed the hell out of them, and was not at all surprised when you guys retired it, because didn't like Zach had just had a kid by then, you'd moved. Yeah, and I can't imagine, a couple of times it's crossed my mind to do something as an organizer, either like do a publication or do a show, and then I realized first I don't like people. Second, like I like to make work, and I can't imagine trading hats between being this organizer and still keeping my creative thing going and still going out and making a living. Like it just seemed like for someone with my frazzled mindset, it would just be a non-starter. So like,
it's two things. It's like I recommend to anyone who is thinking like you are about it. Like I want to organize something, but I don't have any time. You probably don't have the time to do it. It takes up a lot of energy. At the same time, for lots of other people who might be listening who are like, oh, I've been to a comic book show or a zine show and I thought it was cool and I thought maybe I could do something too. You totally can. Like you don't need like a degree in anything to pull it off and pull it off well. You just have to have like you have to have ideas and like a lot of passion for it. So for me, I think it would be like a really good project for like, I don't want to say non-creative because I know everyone's creative in their own way, but people who aren't like trying to make their living or make their big mark on the world like through their creative work, but they love comics or they love whatever, like knitting, what have you, but they're like not a passionate creator of that stuff. I think making a show is a very fun way, and you can do it really small too. It doesn't have to be like a big giant thing. It could just be like 5 comic book artists in a bar one night, not right now, but in the future when we can go to bars again. It would work.
You said that you lived in Chicago for a bit, and I noticed on your resume that you're some educated egghead. Did you? I thought you were another ignorant, like comic book creator like Jeff and me. Junior college dropouts.
You learned everything you knew from like Ninja Turtles comics and issues of heavy metal.
Well, I did both. I did exactly like that for years, and then finally, in my 30s, I was just like, okay, it was because I worked in stores and things for a long time, and I like working in stores. But I got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I don't want to sell stuff to people anymore. It's not for me. I want to make things, and what I wanted to make was books. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make books. And so I tried my best to insinuate myself into the publishing world, like the mainstream publishing world. And I did internships and things like that. And I realized through the advice of some of the people I interned with and things like that, that if I ever wanted to be an editor at a publishing house, it just wasn't going to work if I didn't have a degree. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get a degree in English literature because I like to read, and then I'm going to become an editor. So I went back to school, I did all that. And then by the time I got out, 4 years later, it was already a slim chance that you were going to become an editor. I think it was an even slimmer chance that I was going to become an editor at a publishing house by the time I graduated. So weirdly enough, I just went right into like graphic design, creative direction. And then a few years after college, I dived right into freelance illustration, and I've been rolling on that for about 5 years now. But yeah, I learned about some stuff. I went to college. I went to school at San Francisco State for the first couple of years, and then I transferred when I moved to Portland, Oregon. I transferred to a liberal arts college called Reed College up there, and so that's where I finished off my my education. I got my polish on at Reed College, and
So yeah, like you mentioned, you got out just in time for, I won't call it the death of the print, but certainly a lot of, like, the wave has rolled back substantially. Feels like it's coming back a little more now, since I have this instinct that people have a desire for things that are real, things that they can hold more than they did in the past. Like, I feel like the electronic consumption of media might be receding a little bit. You know, there might be a little bit more of a chance for print to make a little more of a comeback. But you mentioned that instead of doing editing, you went into graphic design. Where did you get your graphic design chops from? Is that from doing the work that came with Zine Fest and with self-publishing comics, or?
That was all on the job learning. You know, that started way back in high school. I was like on the yearbook, you know, and so like, and the newspaper, and it was so long. That was like back in the early 90s, and so that was so long ago that like the newspaper of the school yearbook was still like paste up, you know, like it was like, there was like this book of lines that we would pull out a line and like rub it onto a piece of paper to make the line between two columns of text or something like that. And I really
lecture set or anything?
We did it all. Like it was all like and like clip art that you were like actually clipping out and like little borders and things like that. And so it was kind of funny. I like learned with that, but we also had some like apples, like some Apple, I don't know, Apple IIe's in the corner, and it was kind of funny. I was like really into learning how to use like all this PageMaker and Corel Draw and things like that. And so that basically started it. And I was always trying to convince like the yearbook editor that we needed to go to an all digital design workflow, and they were refused. It was not going to happen in 1994. And I kept always like kind of learning about those, you know, those different programs and things like that. It was never my job for like all through my 20s. I worked in a store or what have you. But I was also like doing my own little zines, and like those, of course, they started off like with just photocopies and whatnot. But I was always trying to kind of like learn how to do it a little bit better, like do the little letters column or the introduction with some, I don't know, some type. And so I was always,
it up.
Yeah, exactly. You say it so much better than I could ever.
Fred's really rehearsed his pronunciation of the word zhuzh over the years. I've been
well, you know,
for a decade.
You cannot kick it with the Bernsteins and not be able to throw it down with some Yiddish.
I didn't know you were kicking it with so many Bernsteins. That's fantastic.
Well, my son's a Bernstein, so.
Oh, there you go. Well, I'm sure he appreciates your zhuzhing.
The other day, so he's just a total annoying dad side note, but so he's completely obsessed with his tablet, and you know he's indoors so much with the fires and everything, so of course we have to indulge more than we normally would. And he was complaining that, you know, there was some schmutz on the screen. And he's like, how am I going to get this schmutz off? And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll take it off with a shtickle of Windex.
Oh, we were talking about zhuzhing. Oh, yes. Yeah, okay, yes. I was like, I got lost in our conversation. I just was living the Bernstein dream. And I was like, oh, that's not, I want to know more.
You were talking about zhuzhing your zines with a shtickle of graphic design know-how.
And I always liked that. Then I was just like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this, and I learned a lot on the job. You know, like either doing my own, you know, kind of every project. I tried to like challenge myself to like learn something new. You know, so like learn how to do something different with Adobe Illustrator. Learn how to do something. And then I ended up working at at a really cool company called Scout Books that made these little notebooks and other little small printed projects. And so I learned a lot about print production there, and I learned basically everything I know about InDesign, which I use all the time now, like on the job, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then and then all through that, I've been using like some things like Photoshop or Manga Studio for like touch-ups of art and comics and things like that. And it's only in the last few years that I decided, okay, like I'm not going to draw on a piece of paper and then scan it and then put it into Photoshop and then clean it up and then do some color or gray on it. And then output it and then print it out and then make a photocopy. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to draw in the computer. And so I've been drawing in the computer for the last few years, and that smoothed everything out. And now I can't, like, because now I work in graphic design, like I do illustrations for clients and things like that. I can't even imagine having to do it, like Fred,
The
you did it
old-fashioned way.
Yeah, you did it for so many years with like the weekly, where I'm sure you were like drawing something with a piece of Bristol board, and what, like, were you like photocopying it or like scanning it, or were you like biking over to the office and like giving them the piece of art? I don't know.
But yeah,
Right.
I'd scan it and I'd email it to them.
Long story short, I just did it. I just did a bunch of like different little bits of graphic design over the years. And I kind of always was like, okay, well, how can I learn something new in this field while I'm doing this little side project? And now I kind of know it all, but I don't know. But it happened amorphously and what do you call it? Naturally, just
Organically.
Exactly.
Are you still making fonts?
I do. I'm gonna do one for a friend of ours soon. But I do them for myself. I do them for other people. That's another thing where I just taught myself, because I was like, okay, I have to stop hand lettering my comics because it takes forever, And I only have respect for all the people who do hand lettering, who are drawing things, the old-fashioned way. I learned how to do it that way too, but it at a certain point I felt like I was like just banging my head on a wall and like having to make corrections and things like that. So I started making fonts, and I still do. I do it for a few clients. I do some like for a couple of clients here where they're publishing books in French that were originally in English, and so I'll create a font from the English person's handwriting.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but weirdly enough, like despite the fact that I do fonts and I do computer lettering for my own comics, I also get hired to do hand lettering for comics. I did the hand lettering for a French book that came out from New York Review of Books, and then I just finished doing the hand lettering for Brecht Evans' new book coming out from Drawn and Quarterly next year. So that was like this big 250, 300 page tome, all hand lettered in color, and so I was hand lettering away for that for I don't know, a month or more. So I still have like the hand lettering in my somewhere back in my brain, but I rely on the font myself.
You've seen my hand lettering. It looks palsied, and that's with a lot of corrections. I mean, that's the me
brand,
zhuzhing
right?
the fuck out of it.
You're still on brand with all that.
Zhuzhing it to the point where you can only see a shtickle of palsy.
Yes. Yeah, that is the brand. Slightly. The look was largely established when I was a chain smoker, so I had really shaky hands anyway. So I have to kind of stick with that.
Well, that's like in opposition to, I think, like Jeff's brand, which is like inhuman precision but still on a piece of paper, like just to torture himself. Like.
Yeah, like, my brand is hating myself and making it as difficult as possible every aspect of the process.
So you did 200 pages of lettering in a month?
Oh, I'd have to check my time tracking application that I used to keep track of how.
What time tracking application do you use? This is gonna be the freelancer corner. I use Toggle. What do you use?
I use something called Top Tracker.
Okay.
And I've used some other ones before. I'm totally obsessed with time tracking, and I think everybody, even if you're not a freelancer, but just like every freelancer for sure, should be like time tracking everything they do, because it's like I know how long it takes me to do this job, and so I know how long to, so if it takes me X amount of hours to do a page of comics, I know how many hours it's going to take me to do 22 pages of comics or 100 pages, and I also know that like how much money am I making? Am I making $5 an hour? Not like probably not the best use of my time. So, and I mean, I keep track of things like, I'm sorry, Jeff, I'll let you get in there in just 1 second.
Huh?
I was just apologizing for interrupting you, but I just was going to say, like, I even track like the things that aren't remunerated at all directly, right? Like I keep track of like, how long am I talking on a podcast, or like, how long did I like go through, blogs to try and find somebody to review my book or something like that, because that's all part of the job too, right?
Yeah, there definitely is. When you freelance, you realize like your time is money. You know, even if you're not making money, your time is money, and it makes you value your time that much more. Certainly when you track it and you're just like, okay, if I'm going to pay myself X number of dollars an hour, you know, for this activity, you know, how worthy is this other thing of my time?
Mm-hmm.
It's been handy for me. I've ended up firing a lot of people behind that.
Firing clients that way?
No, friends.
Oh.
I'm just like, I'm sorry, this just isn't worth my time. What was the imprint that you were self-publishing under before you went professional?
I had my own little publishing company, which also started off as a collective zine type thing because I was into that. It was called Family Style, and so we published little zines from people and our own my little comics and my friend Jonas Madden Connor's comics, and our flagship zine was this zine where we basically talked smack about each other. Like there were 12 people in the collective, and each issue would be about one of the people. And it started off like kind of sweet, where people were like, "Oh, this person's cool. I have this memory with this person," and it quickly devolved into people just talking some mad stuff about each other, and like some friendships were ended and whatnot. And me being like the enterprising young man that I was, I just kept publishing stuff under the brand for a long time, like for maybe 10 years or something like that. So that included my comics and the first issue of my comic Titan and things like that. And then eventually I retired that because, like, number one, it's expensive and takes a lot of your time to run a little small press. And then number two, I started off because I was like, oh, like I'll publish other people and it'll be really cool. I'll like let these other voices get out into the market. And then by the time I was done, there were so many other little small presses putting out other people's voices. I felt it was my work was very superfluous in the market after a while. But it was cool. Well, it was cool while it lasted, and I learned a lot. You know, publishing your own books. You learn a lot about printing, about distribution, about like how the whole thing works, basically.
I didn't realize that the content of Family Style had gotten so contentious, because I remember Family Style from like early to mid aughts San Francisco, more like a group hug as opposed to the work that me and my little cohort of friends were making, which were like considerably more mean spirited. So I'm surprised to hear that Family Style, like the content eventually got so contentious that it cost any friendships.
You know, I think the things like, you know, those sometimes those collective things, they start off as like group hug, and then you know, after a while, like not necessarily but like people will realize that they're not into the people that they're hugging. Like they've been hugging people for so long, and they like no longer.
I'm not feeling this hug.
It's very close and intimate contact, right? Like they might have been like better with a handshake or a wave, and then like when you're publishing like something like in a collective, it really is like a group hug, and then you're suddenly like, wow, I've been like group hugging this person for like 2 years, and they're really sweaty, and also like
I don't think they've showered the entire time. How was Family Style run with, like, did you have regular meetings? How frequently were all 12 creators in the room at once?
I think probably almost never, except at like we would have release parties, and those were really fun because, you know, like the whole thing was like an excuse to be. The whole thing was sort of an excuse to like kind of tighten and more closely knit a social circle that already existed. Mm-hmm. And so we had these big release parties, and it was really fun. You know, we were all young. We liked to, like, you know, tie one on or whatever.
I was gonna say there was some mild debauchery, as I recall.
Yeah, I think that's the exact term, mild. It was not too wild, but it was fun. And so I think that's the time. As far as like how we ran it, each issue had a different editor, and so that was like randomly assigned. And so it would be like I would be the editor for person X, and then person Z would be the editor for the issue that was about me. And it was like really loose because it's like, you know, it's like we didn't have any like quality standards or anything like that, other than the editor like tell someone that like something looked really bad. We basically were just, the quality standard that we had was like turn something in, which as anyone who's worked on a collective zine will tell you that standard is not always met, and so sometimes it would be very difficult to just get people to write their page or two or three.
Yeah, that's
about
already an incredibly lofty bar to hold people up to.
Yeah, but like the zinester brain is not ready to meet a deadline that goes contrary to the whole nature of the beast. So that was really hard. Especially also, we had people who were like, it's not like we were all zinesters, like we were friends, and so there were people who did not do zines or did not do comics who were parts of this, so that they had to do their own little creative bit. And I thought that was really cool, but like it could be really exhausting for them, if like they were like, I'm not a comic book artist, I'm not a cartoonist, I'm not a writer, I'm not a poet, but I've got François like egging me on to write about like Antonio something, and so it could be stressful, I think, for some people. But in the end, like I still have all the issues. I look back at them once in a while, and they're cool. Like I'm really proud that we were supposed to do like 12 issues, and we never did. I think we did 7 or something like that, and then the whole thing kind of faded away. The only sad part is that one of the really key people to the thing was like, she was like issue 9 or something like that with the schedule, and she never got her issue. I always felt really guilty about that. She got married a couple of years ago, and her friends, because she's a zinester, and her friends did like a zine about her, and I got to do my 1 page about her, and it was kind of like my replacement for never getting to write my page about her back in the to 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. Did that experience prime you for your involvement with Study Group?
Yeah, it was like totally like it was like a total resume builder for doing that with Zach. Zach Soto had his own little publishing company, kind of a similar sort of thing and vibe. But Zach's always been like, he's like more popular than I am. Like he's like he has like more pull with the comic book culture than I ever had. And so it was like, when I folded up Family Style, I went right into working with Zach, and I was his quote unquote art director, which basically meant like I tried to make the books that we published or the online stuff that we published look as good as I could. Yeah, so it was a direct lead into that, but it was fun though, because it was more that was like kind of like more from strength to strength, so I kind of like got to let go of some things and let Zach take care of them. Or Shana Matutzak, who is now, she's an editor at Image Comics, she worked with us on that for a while, and that was really kind of cool because there was like a magazine, and there was like real graphic novels that were getting published by real name people. All that was really fun. We did that for a few years, and then Zach also, he went through the same process. He was like, okay, I'm exhausted doing this. I put all my energy into doing this. I'd rather be drawing my own comics. And so he switched over to doing his own thing, and now he's doing his own thing. But yeah, Study Group was really fun. It was like the slightly next level. It wasn't like real pro, but it was a bigger deal, and I felt like I was growing by joining forces with him.
And so in all of this, you've been very productive. How have you found your way into that balancing act? Like, how have you found your way through making a living and not being too stressed and still finding time to engage in your passion and your discipline?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure if I'm really successful at even
I can tell you I do it badly, so I'm
you're like, you want some semblance of hope for this.
I'm just tired of ruining relationships.
Well, actually, like that's a good point. Like, just relationships, like I approach the whole thing a little bit differently than I used to. In the last 5 years, like I moved to Montreal because I went through like a sort of early midlife crisis, where I was getting a lot of freelance work all of a sudden, but I was really unhappy at my job, and my job was honestly a little bit unhappy with me. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to do freelance. But then just right after that, like my girlfriend of like 10 years and I also broke up. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to try something new. I'll go to Montreal and I'll stay there for the summer. And a couple of things happened while I was here. Like, one, I was like way more productive because I took the time to just work on my comics, to work on illustration. I drew every day, and it made a big difference, like in my like art practice, as they say. But then the other thing that happened too was that like I met a new person, and I unbeknownst to me, I was just trying to like like have fun and have a fun summer. But weirdly enough, like within like a week or two of moving here, like I like found like met the person that I ended up falling in love with that I'm still with today. And what you said about relationships, I do think that is kind of part of like I don't know, like making it work, as far as like the work-life balance goes, is to give that relationship or whatever like the right amount of energy. I don't know. I don't know if I had that as balanced 10 years ago. Now in the last 5 years, my partner, she won't take it. Like, right, like she's not going to take it if I work all night on some comic because I have some deadline coming up and I'm freaking out, and so I've got to work, until like 4 a.m. It's just not going to work. She's just like not going to take it. And
Yeah.
so I think just that alone, like being conscious of another person who runs like a more of a 9 to 5 kind of lifestyle, has really helped me, and it's helped me like run my own life like more 9 to 5. I don't work at night. I don't work all night. I don't work on the weekends. I take vacations, that kind of stuff. And I do think that does help like balance it out a little bit.
And is your partner also an artist, or what does she do?
No, she's a biologist by training, and she works.
Crazy.
Yeah, and she works for a big conservation organization, like buys giant plots of land and saves it for the animals and plants that live there and things like that. So it's totally a different world, but it's sometimes we'll say, because people will often be like, whoa, you guys are so different. But like, she's like a scientist who's always been really interested in art, and she has like a lot of interest in the arts and visual, like the visual media, like storytelling, all that kind of stuff. And that I'm an artist, so I've always been really interested in science. I like biology, I like animals, I like the ecology and nature. I like to learn about all that sort of stuff. So it works for us, that kind of combination.
Yeah, I don't know how your dating history's been. Most of my dating history has been with someone who's involved in the arts in some way or another, like they're photographers, or they are writers, or they are, visual artists in some way, or, involved in art history. And I've also dated what I'll call civilians. People. I don't know a better way to put it. I got that from stand-up comedians, because they, like, if they date somebody who's not a stand-up comedian, they're like, yeah, she's a civilian, so she just doesn't understand, how we do this. And I actually have found that it can be really difficult for someone. I can see where it's difficult to deal with someone who has a somewhat artistic temperament, if that makes sense, because it's squirrely, you're like, hey, I can't hang out and I'm going to stay up all night because I got to do this thing. Oh, how much are you making? Jack shit. But I have to do it. Like it doesn't translate very well to people who have good sense. You found a balance.
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, like, yeah, to find that balance, I've just listened to that advice. Like when I tell someone, like when I tell my partner, I'm like, oh, I have to do this project for free. She's like, no, you don't. Yeah, like in fact, you're not allowed to do that project for free. And I really have to convince her why it's worth my time to do that. And I think that's probably a really good lesson that we all should go through our passionate phase and our phase where we're just doing things to like get our name out there, or because we believe in something so much. And I still do pro bono stuff, like when I really believe in a cause, or it's like my friend who like I really want to help out or something like that. But in general, it's like it's a job. You have to treat it like a job. If you wouldn't do this, like if you wouldn't if you wouldn't wash dishes for the same amount of time for free, or if you wouldn't dig a hole in asphalt with a hammer for free in like the same amount of time, like you should be able, like you should probably not like draw for free for that time just because you love to draw. It's still a job.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing early in the career where it's like you're just so, just full of that drive and that passion, and you have to figure out how to properly channel it, because a lot of it just it gets burned off in friction. It doesn't really do anything for you. Were you going to say, Jeff?
Oh, I was just going to mention that I've had similar conversations with my partner, who is also not an artist, although not without not without her creative inclinations, but I recently had a friend contact me to do some work for him, and she was like, what are you going to charge him? And I was like, well, I don't really know. I feel bad like charging money to charging my friends for work that I do. And I got like kind of she had to talk me into not doing this project for free.
Yeah.
And it's like 25 hours of work later. I'm glad that I took her advice, but I was definitely on the verge of doing what I have definitely been paid like $500 a day to do for just about nothing. Because there is that inevitable period of doing work to get your name out there, or just because you're passionate about it, you sort of develop a tendency to devalue your own creative output. You know, you think of drawing as this fun thing that you don't do just to be remunerated, but you need to disabuse yourself of that if you want to make a living. I don't need to explain this to either of you, I guess.
Well, and there's you know, not to completely slam that, there is a place for that, you know, before you have developed into the artist that you've become, you know, before, you know, to build that faculty, you know, to build that ability takes time. You know, when you come out of the gate, you know, you see a lot of people, and this, I feel bad for saying this, but you see a lot of people on social media who are just like, hey, I'm taking commissions. And they shouldn't be, you know, they shouldn't even be posting the stuff. They should just be working in the sketchbook and showing it to their friends. Like, yeah, they're not ready for prime time. So, you know, it makes sense to do whatever anthology, whatever pin up, whatever blah 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 when you're still just learning the craft. But after a point, yeah, like you say, Jeff, it's your time's valuable. You know, you are bringing a skill to this thing, and you deserve to be compensated properly for it.
I mean, like, it's like kind of business 101 or whatever, freelancing 101. But if you don't value your own time, no one else is going to value your time either. One little trick that I did that I like, so, you know, I was like, you know, I read these like freelancing type blogs once in a while, and sometimes they make like my eyes bleed because they're so like just oriented towards like becoming like a weird marketing psychopath or something like that. But one piece of advice that I got off of there that I have followed for the last few years, and I think is good advice, is just always increase your rate every year or every few months, you know. And like, you know, I do hourly, you know, like little hourly gigs and stuff for people, and I on like a website that you do hourly gigs on or whatever. And I think I started at like $15 an hour, right? Which isn't like, it's like in nothing, because you know, this website, you're also competing with people from all around the world. So there's people who work for $2 an hour, you know, so I'm already like a luxury good at $15 an hour.
I think I know this website.
But I just, you know, and then I started being like after you do a few jobs on there, I would just raise my rate by $5 or whatever an hour, you know, and now it's like $45 an hour or whatever is like what I get paid on this website. And like, that was, I forgot to raise it like the last 8 months. And I was like lately I've been like inundated with work, and I'm like, wait, I keep forgetting to raise my rate. I need to raise it like a triple level soon, you know, because I'm underpaid right now, and I have too many people offering me work that I don't really want to do. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, just the raising it a little bit all the time, like, you know, like gradually, and sometimes it can be a little awkward, because then like the person who got you to do some drawings like 2 years ago, they're like, hey, can you do drawings for me? And they're like, well, it was $20 an hour a few years ago. And you're like, no, well, it's like 3 times that much now. You know, you have to tell them what's going on.
Go get some other sucker to draw it for you.
Do you guys mind just at that little pause? I'm just going to take a 2-second break, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something I really want to say. Chief McFibber is gone. There's something I want to say. Chief McFibber is gone. Something I really want to say. Chief McFibber is gone. There's something I want to say. Chief McFibber is gone.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm returned.
Oh, hello.
Sorry, it's like the cocktail hour for me, so I was just getting myself a beer.
So
Oh man, if I had known that's what you were doing, I would have done the same.
It's not too late. It's still it's literally 5 o'clock somewhere where you are, so you're okay.
Yeah, it is precisely 5 o'clock. Can I? Yeah. Do you mind if I do that?
By all means, go right ahead.
All right, I'll be right back.
So
It's always like fun to like kind of watch from the outside because like my friends, it's fun when like things are going well. But one thing I really liked about you is like I can see you put all your energy into biking, like a ton of your energy into biking, and it's like it's kind of amazing to watch him. Like I'm like, oh, I see all of the like rough and tumble energy that like like Fred used to bring to like like drinking some scotch or like smoking like way too many cigarettes or something, and then now he's just put it all into his calves, like they're just rock solid, full of energy.
Frighteningly accurate. Yes. Yeah. A lot of the excess went into cycling.
Yeah, it's been cool. I don't know. I feel like you've been especially like during the last few months with COVID and everything, you've been like mining your own life for a lot of your creative output, and it's been really interesting. I mean, but it's just, I mean that in a good way. It's just been really interesting to see. It's like I don't know. It's like the good kind of autobiographical comics. Same with Jeff. I don't know if Jeff's listening or maybe I'm just complimenting him and he's off chugging, like he's like shotgunning a beer in the background. But like,
just continue to compliment me like I'm not here. I'm curious to hear what you were gonna say.
Oh, I just was gonna say, like I've been following your the kind of like diary strips, not like every day, but like the kind of like slice of life strips that you do online on your Patreon and everything, and it's just cool. It's cool to read. I don't do like autobiographical stuff very often. I'm trying to do this sort of illustrated journal kind of thing. But I've totally just fallen out of the habit of about writing about like the quotidian, like everyday stuff. Man, but like it's no surprise. I like both of you guys, not just as friends, but as artists, and it's been really interesting to like just see your take on like this weird world we're living in. It's pretty strange. It's been a strange year, and it's cool to have your voices in that.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I mean, it means a lot to me to get praise like that from somebody whose work I admire as much as I do yours.
I'm trying to get a grant and to work on my like next personal graphic novel, like another science fiction type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but I know from experience that because I tried to get a grant for a different project a couple of years ago, and it almost made it, but it didn't make it. And I think it's just because I only had like 2 pages of art, and I think that the people really they really respond to seeing like the actual product and not just like your pitch about what the concept is. But like the deadline's like any minute now, it's very beginning of October, and I also have all these other deadlines and freelance gigs and my main day job, which is like drawing a monthly comic. And so I'm like, okay, when am I gonna fit in these comics? But I'm not allowed to like work all night, like I'm not, so it's like I gotta fit it in somewhere. So I gotta do the same thing. I gotta do like 6 or 10 pages by like in the next month in between everything else. So hopefully it'll work.
I'd like to ask you for a minute about the idea of living a life where you don't pull all-nighters and you're not kind of down to the wire on every project you're trying to finish to the point where it's like difficult to live with you. Okay, I guess my question is in 2 parts. First of all, how much of Titan was conceived of and executed kind of under those conditions before you had instituted this idea for yourself that like you weren't going to live that like just mess of like of an artist's lifestyle?
That's really interesting. I'd have to, it's like I have to coordinate all kinds of like different things to like give a really good answer to that. Like where was I living? What element of my life was I in? I will say that even when I first got here, and I didn't have a day job. I had just finished a big freelance gig that was worth a few $1,000s, so I was able to live in Montreal for a couple months working on Titan and working on this other sketchbook project that I was doing. And I worked all the time on that, but even then, you know, like if the girl that I was dating, we just started dating, but if she was like, we're going out tonight, or are you coming over tonight, or this and that, I did, you know, like I wasn't like, oh, I have to work all night tonight. No, I was like, no, I'm gonna go over to your house, you know. And so like from an early point, like and when it's crazy, sometimes I think back. Titan took me about 5 years to draw altogether, draw and write. And but it's really crazy when I think back to it. When I first moved to Montreal, I didn't even have the second issue done. Like I only had the first issue of the book and maybe half the second issue, and I was like starting to draw the rest of the second issue. By the end of the first year of living here, I had finished all the rest of the book. So like I think in like a year and a half, I drew like 3/4 of that book, and that was like where I was like living a more 9 to 5 lifestyle that whole time. You know, I was like working on stuff during the day. I was, you know, putting as much energy as I could into the comic. Now, all that said, like I want every human being who's listening to this, all 2 of them, to know that I acknowledge directly that I didn't have a day job anymore, right? Like I had turned my this comic thing and doing illustrations, graphic design, kind of all kinds of weird gig things, especially the first couple I did do all kinds of weird stuff when I first moved here. I tutored English and gave people graphic design lessons. I was trying to piece it together however I could, but I was being creative like most of the day. So like when you're a 9 to 5, if you can have 9 to 5 hours for your creative time, you really can get a lot done during that time.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Because I'm in a similar situation where just by luck in the last few months, all of the work I've been doing has been creative and for really good clients too. So, you know, I can make my living doing this creative stuff and I'm primed for doing the other stuff, you know, for doing my own. So it's a really smooth transition and I end up keeping much more normal hours, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that's really, to me, that's been a key is like to like be like, okay, it's like time to stop. I mean, and it goes with like the time tracking too, you know, like, because it's like every time I like sit down at the computer, I like turn this little switch on and it tells me that I'm working and it takes a screenshot of what I'm working on. And then like, so sometimes like it'll take a screenshot 10 minutes in and I'll like realize I'm like looking at Instagram or whatever. And this little little screenshot pops up and I'm like, okay, like there's no proof that I was actually working at all. Like there's a screenshot and there's, you know, like, yeah, I don't know, like whatever. And so like just that, like it keeps me focused. I'm a pretty distractible and anxious and all over the place kind of person naturally. So I don't know. It's been important to me to try and create some sort of structure. But I would say if anything, it really helped with Titan. And then, you know, even more to the point, I did another book after Titan that I just drew. I didn't write because the writing part is like the hard part for me, like the creative element that's difficult. But when I'm just drawing, I drew a graphic novel called 13th Avenue which was written by an author named Genevieve Peterson, who's from here, and it's just in French. But I didn't have to write that. I just did I mean, I do that obnoxious thing where I can't think of what the word is in English, découpage, like the layout of the book, and then I drew it all. But that only took me 9 months to draw something like 160 pages worth of comics, and that I did just 9 to 5, like never working a late night. And then I was also doing all kinds of other freelance graphic design and other stuff. But I was just like, this is my job. I have to draw this X amount of pages. Well, now if you woof at that, now I'm drawing a comic. I mean, I got off my schedule a little bit and I really need to get back on it, but I'm mostly off of it because I take on too many extra freelance jobs. But I'm drawing I can't really talk about the details of the comic because it's still a secret, but I'm drawing a monthly comic book that's going to be in comic book stores. And so I have to draw 22 pages. And so I have to draw 6 pages a week of this comic.
Wow.
And if I mess up, you know, it's like if I draw 4 pages, that means I have to draw 8 pages the next week, you know, like I every time there's a little bit of wiggle room, but there's not there's not much, and so I like that. Like I mean, I don't like it. It's not fun. I'm stressed sometimes, but overall, I think it really helps me get the stuff done. And it also makes me realize like I can't redo it, like it's good enough the way it looks. It looks pretty good, and I'm just gonna let it go, and maybe the next page is gonna be even better.
So have you found that working direct digital has helped streamline your process?
I feel kind of lame talking to you two because I think you're both like, as you said, you're both like really keyed into like the analog, the like this great tradition of the analog page, and like doing all your composition on the page, the lettering, like the flow.
I want to get something out of the way before you proceed with that with the caveat there. I'm an idiot for still working like this. Like, I'm a fucking maroon for still making comics this way in 2020.
Well, if you want, like, I'll encourage you. Like, I'll at this point, I really encourage almost everybody that I know who's doing comics should probably switch to doing comics digitally. Mm-hmm. Some people, like if it's really fundamental to your enjoyment of the process, if you just love the way that the Bristol board feels, the ruling pen and the brush and the India ink, and there's something very tactile about it. Or if you can make a lot of money selling your pages, like, awesome, that's great. But if you're like me and you're basically for me, the work of art is the book. Like, that's what I want to get out into the world. It's not the page that I drew. And so for me and for a lot of people, I think it just really makes sense to work digitally. It's so much faster. And the thing that I really like about it too is that it cuts out the non-creative time that I spent before, because I spent I'm kind of a messy illustrator, and my page would just be covered in graphite, and then I would just run my hand through wet India ink, and then I would have to clean all that up, and then and then I would do the physical cleanup with some crappy whiteout, or always seeking the perfect whiteout, never finding it. I finally got into white gouache, which really does the job pretty well.
Yeah.
But then even after that, you still have to do scan the comic, right? So you turn this beautiful analog object that you've created, and then you turn it into a bunch of digital pixels. And for instance, with Titan, I was then going in, and then I was drawing the color, the second color. Titan has a spot color, and I'd be drawing that in with a mouse, clicking around with a mouse in Photoshop. And I realized I was oh, this is so stupid. I should just be drawing. And then it gets rid of so many of those layers, the things that stand between the book, me drawing the book, and it turning into something that's in someone's hands. By going straight digital, I just I cut out all that stuff. I don't have to own a scanner or a printer anymore. I don't have to scan and then zoom way into a drawing to remove the little schmutz that's floating around someone's eyebrow or something like that. It's just more simple. It's kind of what you see is what you get, and I really like it. I can't even imagine. I can kind of imagine doing my comic manually and scanning it, but it would almost take twice as long for me to draw it. And then I really can't imagine, because it's I'd do a drawing for someone for $100 or $200 or $300. I can't imagine doing that and scanning it, right? Because it's I do the drawing. Okay, let's say I do the drawing and it takes me an hour, or let's say it takes 2 hours to do the drawing. And it's wow, okay, this is not that bad. I'm getting $100 for this drawing, and it took me 2 hours to draw it, so I'm getting $50 an hour. Not bad. But then if I had to scan it, just scanning it, how long does that take? It doesn't take 1 minute, it takes some time. And then I have to import it into Photoshop, and then I have to open the file and look at the file and zoom in and do all the cleanup. It's if that adds another hour or two to the process, this good gig turns into a lousy gig pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything you're describing those are at every one of those stages. It occurs to me how much the process could be streamlined by working straight to digital. But I have this thing. It's the same thing that kept me from learning to use an Ames guide, which did make the ass backwards project of working on paper a little bit easier. But I was always I am hesitant to embrace the learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, the time it would take me to learn this is time that I could be working. And obviously it'll save me time down the line, but I leave everything I do till the last minute anyway. So I'm already pressed for time on every project I work on.
No, it's true. You got to kind of create like that kind of like the little thing where you're like, I'm going to do 50 ugly digital drawings, like every day, to get that out of your system so that you can kind of, and it's like you've practiced with your tools, right? Like, you know how to use your tools. You've been using them for like 30 years. And then now you have to learn how to use this other tool set. It's very discomforting, but having gone through it and having resisted it for a long time, like, I was just like you. I thought about, like, I was like, oh, if I learn it, like this stuff, it's like I can just do it faster if I just do the drawing on a piece of paper. I'm really glad at this point that I came through to the other side, and if I can help others come through to the other side, I would like to.
If you can midwife.
Yeah. I don't use it, but what seems to work for a lot of people is the iPad with Procreate, because it's much closer, right? It's closer to what we all grew up with, which is like drawing on a piece of paper. Because I do the weird thing where I draw on this like tablet, and then like my marks appear on my laptop, which is like not in the same place, and I'm looking at the laptop. I'm not looking at my hand when I draw. It's a very weird sensation to get through your mind, but it works for me. But for a lot of people who have a little difficulty with it, it really seems like the working on the iPad with the Apple Pencil with Procreate is like it seems that they get really comfy with it pretty fast.
Yeah, that seems like the way to go. I know that was the sensation amongst all the kids from San Francisco that wound up moving down to LA to work at the Cartoon Network. I was watching all their like Procreate doodles and stuff online when they all first started playing with those.
Too late. It's not too late.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's not too late. I haven't totally disappeared down the abyss of analog draftsmanship. But before we get too far from that initial question about scheduling, I'm just curious about, let me know if this is me projecting my own experience working under these circumstances. I do feel like there are bits of kind of inspiration for my personal work that hit late at night when my brain is in maybe a bit more of an addled state. But that ordeal may make it so that I'm more receptive to certain ideas, or that certain, concepts germinate differently than they would during normal waking hours. Like I said, I just finished reading Titan, and I think it's a work of, it's marvelously crafted. It looks amazing. It's a fantastic story. But I'm wondering if there's like some aspects of that late night inspiration, or the kind of the inspiration that hits you when you're under like psychological duress that you feel are sacrificed by working kind of more rigid hours.
No, I mean, I totally feel you on that. And for me, like I definitely I appreciate that, like the ideas that I have like at weird moments and things of the day. And I guess that I just try and basically like remember what I'm thinking about, and then like reprocesses it when I go into drawing the comic, where like the drawing, the writing, which are all mixed up for me. Like, it's not like I write a script and then draw the comic. I do it all kind of together. Definitely, I'm trying to always like connect and embrace those strange ideas that I have at other points in my life. But I don't like necessarily feel the need to to sit down at the computer and start drawing every time. But I could like take a note, or write a little write some note in my notebook, or sketch something. Or I do a similar sort of thing, like when because I try really hard. I'm naturally a night owl, but I try really hard to always go to bed by midnight. And so sometimes I go to bed at midnight and I really can't sleep. I don't want to sleep, and I'll often read or what have you, classic things to do. But other times I'll do like it's almost like ritualistic, where I'll like, when I was working on Titan, I would sit there and I would be like lay down in bed, and instead of like thinking about anything, I would just like repeat the word Titan in my head. I would just be like Titan, 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 and then I would think about the comic, and I would come up with ideas, and then I would have weird ideas while I was like falling asleep. And then in the morning, I would like, I would wake up and I would be like, oh, right. Like I had this idea for like this guy's arm would be used in this way. Like that's kind of interesting or something like that. And now I've moved on. Like I'm not working on Titan anymore, but I do the same thing for this thing that I'll give you guys a scoop. I'll tell you the name of this project I want to work on. The working title is Blue Moon is the thing that I want to get this grant for. And so like when I'm going to bed, I'll be like Blue Moon, Blue Moon, Blue Moon, and I'll just try and think about Blue Moon. I'll think about the characters. I'll try and think about little interactions. I do it like when I'm on a road trip or something too. My partner and I just got back from a long camping trip, and like we're on the road a lot, and I'll do the same thing where on the road. I'll just try and think about the work that I'm doing, the project that I'm doing, because otherwise I'm like a very anxious person. I'll just think about whatever, right? Yeah, like I'll worry about all the bills I have to pay. I'll worry about.
I love the idea of taking the like hours that are generally like that's prime like unproductive, anxious racing thought hours. You're actually using it for creative productivity.
I'm trying at least, and and it's the kind of thing where it doesn't work every time, but it doesn't have to work every time. It's like mining for gold or whatever, like sometimes you don't have to hit gold every time to have a successful mine. And in fact, you don't even ever have to hit gold. Like you can be mining for gold and just hit like copper, and you're like, well, at least I have some copper that I can turn into something here.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
So why Montreal of all places what sent you up there after you left SF?
I was going through this like early midlife crisis, and the reason I came to Montreal was because my mother's from Quebec. My mother's not from Montreal, but from this land of French people that I currently live in. My mother's from Quebec. My father is from Haiti, which is an island in the Caribbean, and I grew, when I was a little kid, I only spoke French. My mom only spoke French, and my father spoke French too, but I only spoke French when I was little. And then one day, like my father was like, no more French in this house. He forbade French in the household because he wanted me to grow up speaking English. And weirdly enough, that was my time. And so after that, I learned English and I forgot French. Like I could not speak French anymore at all. And I, in high school, I tried to learn French, and I made some effort. It always frustrated me. Like I have two older sisters, and my mom and my older sisters would speak French to each other to keep secrets from me, because they never forgot how to speak French. And me, I was too little. I forgot how to speak French. It always really like frustrated me that I had lost this part of my cultural background. And so it was always in the back of my mind, like, okay, maybe I'll go live in a French-speaking place. Like maybe I'll go live here, there, the other place. And I came here to Montreal not only because, it's like, number one, like at a top level, I was like, okay, I can reconnect with my mom's culture and world a little bit, which was sort of denied to me, and I didn't understand it at all. And then secondly, it just was easy. It was much easier to move here than to move to say somewhere like move to Paris or something like that, right? It's really much cheaper here than is there. It's much closer. And then probably the most important thing of all, which I didn't know for a long time, but I was actually, because my mother's from Canada, I was actually eligible to be a Canadian citizen, like in a much easier way than I would have been otherwise if I was just an American immigrant.
Oh wow. I didn't.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I compared my story to, when I first got here, I taught English. I like tutored people in English, and I thought what I was going to be tutoring was like French Canadians who want to improve their English, and I did work with a couple clients like that, but I largely worked with immigrants from all over the world, like people from Iran or from Lebanon or whatever, who were trying to improve their English living here. And I know from my experience that like it was really a lot easier for me than it is for a lot of these people who are immigrating from all around the world to come to Canada. So and so I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm a dual citizen. It made my life a lot easier for sure.
Do you know any single Canadian women who might want to hook up with a fat old Black American?
I you're really selling it. So I think it might be able to happen.
Sweet. So my next question is not so different than what Fred just asked. Would you like to marry me?
Because it's true, we could do it. We just do it that way. You know, I'm gonna have to take it under consideration, both of these projects. No, I mean,
I love being referred to as a project.
no, I mean it's so crazy. It's also, I mean, you know, like all joking aside, it's like I moved here while Obama was president, right? Like, and and then it's so much more real, the divide now. Like I can hear it in my friends' voices when I get the chance to talk to my friends from the United States. Like they're stressed, like they're just so much more stressed out than I am. Even in the middle of all this coronavirus stuff and everything else, there's this big top level stress in the United States. It's weird because I'm on the outside of it, but yet I feel totally implicated in it at the same time. Like I don't even know. I know I should have a better answer to this question that I posed to myself, but I don't know what to make of it. But it's a little weird watching our life in the United States compared to what's going on here, which is not there. It's nothing perfect, but everything's like it's not turned up to 11 all the time, you know.
Well, you live in a still functioning democracy.
Yeah, I think that might be a big part.
Yeah, I didn't realize how quickly I would become nostalgic for the time when I lived in a still functioning democracy.
It's that thing, right? I can't remember who said it, but they said something about the apocalypse. It happens slowly and then fast. I don't know what stage we are in slowly to fast, but I'm a little more afraid than I was a little while ago. But Montreal, it's cool. I'll spread the word around that I have Fred looking for a wife and Jeff looking for a throuple to get into.
Are you and your partner married? I wasn't sure where the.
No, we're not married. But it's kind of funny. No one gets married in Quebec specifically. In like Anglophone Canada, like in British Columbia or Ontario or whatever, people get married like the same way that they do in the United States. But here, no one gets married. Like it's like something like jaw dropping, like how few people are married. Like for me, it's like just about everyone I know is either married or has been married. Like there's a few people who I know who are single, or they've always been single, or they've never married their partner. But almost everybody in the United States that I know of around my age has been married, etc.
Yeah.
My partner, totally the opposite. She knows like 2 people ever who have gotten married. No one else has ever gotten married. It's just not a thing for French Canadians. They don't do it anymore. They had like this thing that they call the Quiet Revolution, which was in the 60s, because before that, all through history, Quebec was like super controlled by the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church was connected with like absolutely everything from like education to the government to everything. And then they had what's called the Révolution Tranquille in the 60s, and that was basically all the people were like, no, we're done. It's not happening anymore. We're not going to let these priests control every element of our lives. And one of the things that happened because of, well, number one, like no one goes to church anymore. The churches are all empty and everything like that. But number 2 is like no one gets married anymore. So we're like conjoint. We're like there's a word for that in English. I forget what it is, like a common law or something, common law partners or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like we do our taxes together and stuff like that, but like we didn't get married.
Wow. I didn't know the backlash against the Catholic Church was so strong there.
Yeah, I mean, I've only learned a bunch of this stuff since moving here. It's a history that you don't hear in the United States at all, because it's like it just doesn't affect. Especially, I think all of us. No, Jeff, you're from the East Coast, but like on the West Coast, it's like super far away. Like this concept of like Quebec, these people who live in North America who speak French. It's like it's really far away. It's like when I was growing up in San Diego, it's like the French kid. Like it just was meaningless to people. You know, like it didn't even make sense at all.
Yeah, the only reason I have any familiarity with it is because of cartoonists like Julie Duchet. Like, otherwise I would not know anything about Quebec. Oh, and you know, who created Louis Riel?
Chester Brown.
Yeah. So yeah, my familiarity with French Canadian culture is almost exclusively through Drawn and Quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. they filtered it for you. They cut the cream off the top and they're like, here's the good stuff.
Exactly.
I was sort of curious about the nuts and bolts of the conditions under which Titan was created, but just like what you were doing professionally while you were drawing Titan.
Yeah, I was doing Titan, and I had a very minuscule, like honestly really small advance from my French publisher, from the publisher here in Montreal.
Mhm.
But I really appreciated it because it gave me the energy to kind of work on the comic. But during that whole time, I had to I wasn't making money from the comic by any means. I think I had like $1,000 that I made off of the comic while I was finishing it. So for all the rest, I was really, really piecing it together. So everything from like tutoring English, doing little tiny graphic design jobs, like teeny tiny, like I was putting an ad up on Craigslist and like doing a logo for like $50 for like a little vintage clothing store, that kind of stuff. And this is just a couple of years ago when I was here. And then I was working on this website, the aforementioned website where I like started working off at $15 an hour, doing like illustration, graphic design gigs, like, and that like that was one of the reasons why I started tracking my time, because I just wanted to track how much time I was spent like searching for jobs and applying for jobs on that site.
Oh yeah. Things. Yeah, that can be very time consuming. Writing, I got to this point where I actually started boilerplating pitches. I was doing pitches for graphic design and illustration. So I would go through, be like, this was a great pitch, copy, paste, so I could go back through and customize it.
I don't even know how you could not do that. Anyone who not for your dream job, not for your, if you're like, this design firm would be super awesome to work for, but for like somebody who's going to pay you $100 to do something, like you better copy paste that thing. Like they don't deserve like typing. I always type a little, like I do like a little,
you want to change the names.
I zhuzh it up.
I would like to work to fill in the blank.
but yeah, no, please, like people really should. In fact, I don't even copy paste. Well, one thing is, like, now I'm lucky I don't have to do that quite as much. I stopped copy pasting, and I bought like a little tiny program that like I write like a little combination of 3 letters, and then it like creates like a form letter for me, and I like type in the name, and I type in the company name, and I type in like my level of excitement for what they're doing, and then like I hit enter, and it all is like it's populated in the thing, and then I hit send, and that's it. Like and I think
that was down to science.
Oh, that was a well spent. Like I think it was like $5. The program is Typinator, and like anything that does that kind of work for you. Like you said, Fred, like everyone says, it's like our time is worth money, right? Like so, if you spend 10 minutes writing somebody like a little email, like so you have to take like a sixth of your hourly rate and think about like that you just lost that because you could be theoretically working towards that. And so if you can change that 10 minutes into 1 minute, you just saved yourself a lot of money, you saved yourself a lot of time. And so please don't like write like a personal response for anything that's like a little gig. But I'm sorry, Jeff, you were asking about all the stuff I was doing. I went off on this tangent about typing. But
no, not at all. That was the answer to my question that was meant for the edification of our listeners was actually helpful for me personally. So I think
yeah, but it's like the big top level. Don't type anymore. Like stop writing. But yeah, I was doing all kinds of like little gigs, and honestly, it was really, really hard. Like the first couple of years here were really pretty rough. Like I would be always like, and I often got to like some points where like it would be like my partner would be like, okay, well maybe you need to look for another job, and I would be like, okay, it's time to look for another job, and I would get my resume together and I would go to stores because that's what I did for years since I worked in bookstores and like a paper store and all kinds of stuff. And there's no more stores. Like stores stopped existing, I feel like, in the last 10 years. And so like there's just so many fewer of them. I would drop off my resume and it wouldn't even be like, I could understand like my French is not perfect. So I can imagine like that the stores I would be applying to, if I like chatted with them in my not perfect French, I can imagine that they would be like, oh, this guy's not going to work because his French is bad,
Yeah.
But it was like I was leaving my resume, my French resume, with people that was all cut like perfectly corrected and everything. No calls back. And this is like, I've worked in stores for like 15 years. I've been like the manager of like, big stores that like really sold stuff, and it's crazy. Like I can't even get for a long time I didn't get any calls back to work in any shops at all. I would then at a certain point I did the same kind of like time calculation too with working in a shop, because I would be like, okay, if I work in this store, they're paying like $11 an hour or whatever. Cool. It's nice to make $11 an hour. But I also have to like get to the store, and like I have to think about the time that I have to spend, commuting to the store and XYZ. Is that better, or is it better for me to just focus on trying to get more freelance gigs and do more little illustration jobs? Because if I can get $15 an hour doing an illustration job, but I don't have to go like bike or bus across town to get like to this retail job, it turns out to be a lot more. It turns out to be more money just from that. So I gave up trying to get a retail gig, and I just concentrated on trying to find more graphic design work, more illustration work. I was really lucky. In the middle of all that, I did a 3 months at a really like a big festival, like a comedy festival, that in all honesty was an extraordinarily difficult and horrendous day job, because I was doing graphic design for like a comedy festival that happens, and it's like it takes place during the summer, and they only have like a little bit of lead up time to it. And so they put there's this gigantic downward pressure that they put on the graphic designers to get like all the ads for the newspapers and stuff out in the shortest amount of time, and they expect everybody to work like these super long hours. So it was like not a fun gig, but it was 3 months long, and it paid okay money. And at the end of it, I was it really helped me out, because it's like my computer broke right before the gig started, and then I used their computer like to have a day job at like at an office, and at the end of all that I was able to buy my current computer cash. And so that was like just that was great. So I really was just piecing it together. It didn't all come together. And then but one thing I realized is that like it makes a really big difference to have your book come out. People realize that you're like a person all of a sudden, like because I had all these like little mini comics and zines and everything, and short story in this anthology and short story in this anthology. But then here in Quebec, when my book came out in French, Titan, the weekend my book came out, like another publisher was like, hey, do you want to draw another book? Like, I don't think that they would have come up to me if they were like, they had just seen my Instagram or whatever.
Success builds off of that initial success.
Even before it's a success, right? Like when the book's just started, the book doesn't even have to sell, but like if someone sees it, it's gonna make a bigger difference. You know what I mean?
It legitimizes you.
And then I also started doing like, Canada, so they like the libraries and stuff have like programs where they bring some artist in to talk and stuff like that. I started doing that kind of stuff too.
Getting back to Titan, what was the initial inspiration for Titan? Because I've got my presumptions, but you've also mentioned your lineage. Your Haitian father. I see like a lot of like colonialism in this. I see a lot of apartheid in it. It makes me think a little bit of the Battle of Algiers. Actually, a lot bit of the Battle of Algiers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm curious. Like what was where did this come from?
Well, yeah, I'll talk about it. I'm almost like tempted to. I was just like, oh, I like this riff that Fred is going on. This is really good. He should just tell me what my comic is about, and I'll just nod sagely, and I'll be like, why yes, Mr. Nolan, that's exactly what I was thinking. And all those highbrow cultural reference points, completely. Yeah, no, I mean like all of those come into it. Definitely like my own cultural background, which is like a mixed race kid. Like I don't know, when I grew up saying I was a mulatto, but I don't think you're allowed to say that anymore.
Yeah, I believe that is no longer accepted.
Sorry, you can bleep that.
I will accept it, but I accept all kinds of hinky shit. So you really don't want to go by my standards.
I mean, maybe I'll get but it's funny. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, that was like the word that I used. And I was just reading an article the other day, and like someone was like talking about all the different terms that they didn't want to be used for them who was a mixed ethnicity person. So now I'm like, I don't know. Well, maybe I'll just never mention it ever again.
Like quadroon, like was there any like really like back in the 1800s
Oh, well,
references?
I remember the first time I went to Europe, I was seated next to a Scottish woman, like a young Scottish woman who like got like super drunk and was like chatting with me, and she was like really friendly. And I was like, oh, like my only reaction, I was like, okay, I guess I will also get drunk, like, and chat with this Scottish woman.
Well,
But
you
she,
want to meet people at their level.
yeah, exactly. I'm very good about that. Like, and like, I won't attempt a Scottish accent. I'll save all
Oh,
your
come on,
listeners from
please,
that.
please.
But this woman, she was like, oh yeah, no, I can't do it. It's not gonna work. I was about to like unleash like a Lucky the Leprechaun thing. It's like not gonna work. But she was like, oh, you're half caste, and I was like, half
Oh, oh,
caste.
oh,
Wow, that's
oh.
good. Like, and I had never heard that, and I was like, oh,
That is
like,
some fucking. That sounds like it's from a George R.R. Martin book.
yeah,
Like,
no, like
Well,
that's
I mean, it's not far off.
it's for like people from from like the Raj, like it was like where your dad was a British explorer and your mom was like some Indian lady. I was like, oh, okay, I'm half caste. Cool.
Well,
I
I
like
mean,
that. Long story short, like it's definitely in my ethnic background to be interested in all this sort of stuff. And it's not like a simple story, right? Like my father's not a black man. My father is also a mixed race man. And so like then if you
so
go
you're
back,
quarter cast.
yeah, like a quarter cast, that's like the new app, right? Like the quarter cast. And like so like and so like and then that goes back into like it goes back into like my father's like whole cultural history, is very mixed, right? Like there's both like African slaves in my background and also like white like Spanish and French settler people and like people from the United States and stuff like that. And then on the other side, on my mother's side, it's also interesting, because it's like my mother is like a white lady, but also like the French Canadian people are also like both like the Scottish people, both a conquered and conquering people, right? Like they colonized North America, but then they also were like conquered by the British and have lived under British rule for hundreds of years also. So definitely like I've definitely been primed to like kind of like see the complications of colonization, right? Like to me there's no simple story that goes into it. And I think that definitely colored Titan in a lot of ways, like because there's like one of the characters is a colonizer character, one of the people is an oppressed person, and like there's multiple protagonists and different people who have different points of view in the comic. But yeah, I mean, I've always been really interested in that. I've been really interested in like colonialization worldwide. It's like this gigantic worldwide phenomenon that's really like transformed the modern world. It is like maybe one of the most fundamental structures and forces of the last 200 to 500 years.
Yeah.
I am really interested and like I learned a lot and I studied a lot about like Jim Crow, the slave codes in the United States, like the ways that like the law codified like the position of black people in the United States in a certain way. And like, and it didn't used to be like that, right? Like I'm sure I'm not like dropping any fucking knowledge on, excuse me for saying that, I'm sure I'm not dropping any knowledge on you guys, but like once upon a time, like the word slave and black were not synonymous in the United States, right? Like they were like, that was like, and that was a thing, like like the people who were making the laws were like, okay, we're going to codify this into law. All that kind of stuff, like the ways like bad laws like turn into like make like bad economic decisions turn into bad laws, which turn into like oppression, which turns into like people's very like chance to like live a quote unquote normal life is taken away from them. All that's just like always been really fascinating to me and interesting to me, economics and everything. So all that went into the creation of this comic book, this silly sci-fi thriller.
So this is your life, as you just said. So is this something that you feel have you for some time been thinking that you wanted to approach something like that, to bring your worlds, your life and your creative world together? Or is this something that kind of owes to this current moment, where we're dealing we're seeing the fallout from centuries of colonization? Is it both? Like I'm curious, like how it congealed into this specific project.
That's that's really good, really hard. I don't know, like, like, the thing is like Titan started off as kind of a stupid idea in a way, right? Like I basically I was like, what if there were big people, and like, it just spun out from like, what if there were big people, which is like kind of like not like the most cerebral idea to ever have. But I was just like seeking like a way to make that kind of dumb sci-fi conceit like sort of make sense and sort of actually have something to say about the world. And
Yeah.
and then it ended up, to whatever degree it worked, it kind of worked, like where I was able to take this metaphor and then explore things that I thought were interesting. And then the really weird part is that, it's like I said, it's like, what did I start this comic in, like something like 2012 or something, so it was like in the Obama presidency, and like this conversation was alive and well at that time, like we were, there's like, for instance, there's like scenes of like police violence in Titan that like reflect and are connected to like scenes of police violence that like, I've seen growing up my whole life. I like that, I was like living in the Bay Area when Oscar Grant was killed. And then also there's just like moving back, I mean, like I don't even know when that was. Like that was 10 years ago or something like that. It's never stopped, right? And it had never stopped before that. Like people
Right. That was kind of like a funny, not funny, but like a bookmark. It was something that brought, for whatever reason, because of smartphones, what have you, it came to the wider, because of social media, it came to wider attention. But it's not like the shot heard around the world. It's not like this thing that kicked off it's not the Boston Tea Party. It's not this unique moment in history. It's on that continuum of history, and it's a continuum of police brutality that has always been present, and I hope won't always be present, but is still with us.
Right.
But
like,
people,
no, it's
yeah.
no, you're exactly right. It's like something that's always been happening, and it's just that like we now have like this weird technology where it's like everyone has a camera with them all the time, and so we're seeing it more.
Yeah.
So all of that was like present in the book, and there's elements of that in the book. Yeah. And but I started writing my book like 7 years ago, and I was like, and like that was also like, it was like kind of like during the Arab Spring, like during the Green Revolution in Iran, like the revolution that never took.
Yeah.
And so I was like kind of inspired by all these different things. And then it's so strange, it's so upsetting for the book to be coming out now, because it's too close to the bone. You know what I mean? Like my home country, the country I was born in, the country that like I spent almost all my life in, is just really roiling with this rage and energy, and I'm hopeful for the future. Like there's sort of a dialogue that happens in Titan towards the end about like whether we should be hopeful or pessimistic about the future when human nature is what it is. I come down on the hopeful side of the line, but I'm not 100% sure about that decision.
Yeah. And, I was curious also, your main character, or the Terran in the film, sounds like he's of Portuguese extraction.
Yeah, he's supposed to be from Brazil.
Okay, I was curious if there was like any, because again, that's another country. I mean, they all have complicated histories, but like, yeah, the Portuguese stamp on the world is one that's frequently overlooked, but it's massive. And yeah, right. Curious if there was any significance to having someone from that lineage in the book.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a little weird because it's like, I'm not Portuguese. I've never been to Brazil. I don't really have like, like in a way it's like, it's cultural appropriation to have like my character be like from a place that I have no connection with. But there were a couple things that when I started writing the book, I knew it was going to be about a relationship between like someone from this oppressed underclass, the Titans, and somebody from the Earth who was the man, like the overseer. And like I also knew that like literally that character was going to be the male character and there was going to be a female character. But I didn't really have like it all pieced together. And I started kind of piecing different ideas and concepts together. And like one thing that I wanted early on is I realized I was like, oh, okay, like my main character is going to be a black man, because that will like kind of complicate and undercut and twist some of the symbolism of like the man, right? Like the way like the of him being like on top of on top of everything and in control of everything and having authority over everybody. That's good. Like just that, given like the history of like the global history of like the black experience, like that's going to change sort of things. And initially I thought he was going to be from the United States, but then also I just didn't want him to be from the United States either. I wanted to kind of portray a future that was a little bit twisted from what we might have seen. And everything that we've seen in science fiction, almost the whole history of science fiction, right, is from people from the United States are in control of everything. Like maybe, and usually men from the United States are in control of everything, and that reflects reality for the 20th century. Yeah. But I don't think necessarily is going to reflect what the reality is in the future. So I kind of fished around. I was like, okay, like where's a place where like I can kind of like create this like this black male non-American character. And I was like, oh, what about Brazil? Brazil is a really good and interesting place because, as you said, it has such a complicated history, with like the way like race and caste have like been like dealt with there, the colonial experience there. Slavery existed in Brazil much later than it did in the United States, I think by a good like 10 or 20 years or something like that.
It might have been 20 years. Yeah, it was the last country in the Western Hemisphere, possibly the world, to officially end slavery.
I think that's exactly right. And so like all of those things kind of led like fed into my decision to have João be from Brazil. And then also, I've always been interested in Brazil. I've never been there. I've read some Brazilian literature. I've studied it a little bit. I'm very much a tourist in it. But one area that I'm still very much a tourist, but like it really got me into like the culture there or whatever was the music. Like I got into Brazilian music for a long time, and that, like, by having João be from Brazil, that allowed me to kind of like open up like a little door in my brain that allowed me to think about music in a different way. And I think that may have been the thing that music plays a part in Titan. And I think it was actually like I think it was because I was thinking about him being from Brazil, and it made me think about this this song by Caetano Veloso called Terra, to Earth, and it's a song about seeing the photo of the Earth from space for the first time. And it's like kind of a erotic song it's a erotic romantic song about like a planet, which is kind of an interesting idea. And so that kind of like put a little idea in my brain about like some of the kind of like themes or ideas I might weave into Titan. And then interestingly enough too, like Caetano Veloso, he saw the photo of the Earth for the first time. He was in prison for being a political revolutionary and like an enemy of the military junta that controlled Brazil. So all those things, like it's kind of like like that's one of the things I like about science fiction is it can connect with and contain our real history. And so to me, I guess Brazil was just such a weird, rich and beautiful history that I like, with so many conflicting concepts and ideas, that's what attracted me to it.
Yeah, and that also answers one of my other questions. I don't know Brazilian music, and I was curious if those people that you mentioned on vinyl were actual artists, or if you had conjured them. So yeah, that's awesome. I also love how you named your chapters.
Yeah.
I do think the one where the main character is hooked up should have been called "Making Flippy Floppy" from the Talking Heads song.
I chose the wrong Talking Heads song to reference.
The director's cut.
If only Life During Wartime hadn't been such a fitting title for that other chapter. I guess I can see there being a real Sophie's choice there.
Well, it's kind of funny, like that's the choice for the spoiler alert. There's a sex scene in my comic, and the chapter title is Just Like Honey, after the Jesus and Mary Chain song. And that specific chapter got like called out like in a reader review recently, because the person was like, I'm so sick of science fiction books having 20th century music, specifically the music that the artist likes included. And he's like, I just like your comic. I don't need to watch a 7-page long silent sex scene that's set to Just Like Honey by the Jesus and Mary chain. He was not into it. So maybe I should have maybe he probably would have appreciated it more if it was making Flippy Floppy.
Or like a corn song. I don't know. Why would you have that complaint? So,
well, I mean, like now if it was written, it would just be WAP, right?
Yeah.
There's just no, like, every sex scene that will ever be written by me from now on is just set to that.
I wish that I could have seen the words "wet ass pussy" at the beginning of that chapter instead. But that's almost too much of a spoiler, Like,
that's true.
There's no, at least Just Like Honey is open to interpretation, but there's no way you could be like, well, maybe the pussy that's wet is the death of the state. Maybe it's the state-run pussy that's going to get fucked by the workers' uprising.
It's wet with the blood of pigs who've been slaughtered by Antifa.
Wet with the blood of the bourgeoisie.
I'm getting hot just listening to you guys talk about this.
Oh, I'm fully erect right now. Fred, you can edit that out.
Oh, there's going to be so much editing.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you liked it. Like I said, like the reader review was like, it was like talking about what a trope it is to have like music in a futuristic thing. Although, like, in my defense, I started writing this in like 2012. It's like before Guardians of the Galaxy came out and stuff like that. I was like, I thought I had a fresh idea on my plate, but not really.
Well, thanks for ruining Guardians of the Galaxy for me.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of WAP in Guardians. I think.
I'm one of 5 people on Earth who has not seen that, or I think almost any other Marvel movie.
Oh, good on you. Good on you.
I'm pretty proud of it because I'm a snarky little prick that way.
I mean, you're only robbing yourself of an experience of mediocre distraction.
See, I fill that time watching People's Court instead.
Guardians of the Galaxy is just People's Court with explosions.
Well, Jeff, did you have anything else?
No, that covered just about all of the ground that I would like to discuss about Francois's professional life. I was thinking about how lovely this was, though, and how we could all do it on a personal level, on something like a semi-regular basis.
Anytime. Well, that was like I was listening into you guys' chat with Justin, and I felt like Justin Hall, and I felt like I was like in the room with you guys, and I was like, oh, this would be so cool if I was in the room with these guys. So
we're pretty cool guys to be in a room with.
But the only problem is that I'm like not as cool as Justin, and so it's like like the overall episode.
That's our problem too.
He slumps with us.
He's your pinch hitter. Like actually, I'm like glad that like you weren't like in the middle of their interview. You weren't like, hey François, just a second, we've got Justin on the line. And then I would know I had like completely failed. Like you just been like, oh, this episode is just hot garbage, and we just need Justin to pull it out of the fire for us.
You got bumped.
I hope you don't mind if we spice up this episode with a sexual tourism anecdote from Justin Hall.
No, never. Like honestly, you can just like kind of cut in, like do a little music, and then just cut into him like telling one of his wonderful tales, and then you just can like fade right back into me, and I'm sure it'll spice it all up.
So what I know you have a project upcoming that you cannot talk about, but what else is on the horizon for you?
Okay. You know what? I'll give you guys a scoop. I'll tell you about this project that I'm working on right now, in the early stages. Not the monthly comic that I'm doing, but my next graphic novel, like what I want it to be. And I won't spoil too much for you, but I'll give you a little scoop. for all your listeners, because you guys are one of my favorites. So I'm working on a comic, a sci-fi comic that's like Titan, is going to be a lot about class issues in the world, but it's going to kind of be an extension and expansion of the ideas in Titan, because Titan is very much like concerned with the proletariat and like industrial labor and things like that. And I've had people tell me, you know, that Titan could just as easily, like 90% of the storyline could just take place in 1890 as in 2190. So, and that like totally makes sense to me. So I'm doing another story that's a little bit more about consumerism and like the 1% versus the 99%. And it's a sci-fi take on the Bluebeard story. So it's a sci-fi take on like the idea of like a very rich man with a like an endless amount of capital who ends up marrying a poor woman, but everything is not as it seems, and her life is very much in danger and threatened by this like uber capitalist. So that's going to be my next project according to my current life goal and my life plan, and I'm just starting to write that. It's going to be called Blue Moon, I think. It takes place on the moon, and I think that's going to be pretty fun. I'm just starting to write that, and I have to do a pitch because I want to get some grant money to work on that, because otherwise I have to focus on my day job, which is writing, which is not writing but drawing this monthly comic, which is going to also be coming out from Oni Press in 2021. I can't say what it is, but it's co-created by someone who's like a little bit famous. So it's
comics famous or real life famous?
I think actually like real life, like slightly real life famous. And so I think it's going to be like, I don't know, we'll see. But I think I actually like might have a little bit of a higher profile in 2021 than I do in 2020. We'll see. With any luck, I will. But that's my day job. I'm working on that all the time.
We got in on the ground floor with you.
Of course. Well, you'll be. No, we started from the bottom. Now we're here, and then I'm gonna take you with me all the way to the top. I feel the opposite. I feel like you guys are letting me in onto your like gravy train. I'm so excited to be on here with you guys. Yeah. Serious moonlighting with you guys.
You are making me blush.
Yeah.
And that's hard because I'm black as fuck.
Get those capillaries moving.
Well, cool, man. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We definitely have to do this like completely off the record, and just because I enjoy talking to you.
I don't mind. We can do it anytime. I'm always around.
And maybe deeper into cocktail hour next time.
I also don't mind that either. It all works for me. I don't have a social life anymore, so you guys can be part of that too.
Nobody does.
Yeah. The only reason I do is because it's built into my job, and I hate it.
Anytime, gentlemen, anytime. Both of you, please keep up your good work. It's been, it really, I'm not just like, I don't know what the right term for that is, what the colloquial term for that is, but I'm not just trying to...
Washing balls?
Yeah, I'm not just washing balls, as they say.
That's a damn shame.
I mean, I am washing balls, but not just washing balls. But no, it's been I feel like both of you are really on a tear is like a slight exaggeration, but I feel like you both are like really hitting your groove lately. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of both of your work in the near term.
Oh, thank you, man.
Thank you. Thanks. As I said before, having just finished Titan and having an even higher opinion of your work than I did earlier, it means a lot to me to hear praise from you like that.